Hi there, remember me? I'm Ken, and I'm sat again in my thinking chair. In my last video, I was thinking about great writers, and my video was about a little booklet I'd written for Ruby called Great Writers. In the book, really, it was about Charles Dickens, who is my favourite writer. However, at the end of the video, I was sat in my thinking chair again, thinking, all the writers I know are white. I don't know any black writers. In fact, we were never told about black writers at school. I mean, there must be some. So I decided to do some investigation. Now, when I was younger, if I wanted to do some research, I'd have to go down to the library, look at maybe the Encyclopedia Britannica, 26 volumes, and try to find the information from there. A long and arduous task, usually. Today, of course, with modern technology, it's easy. I don't have to read anything. All I have to do is say to Google, tell me about black writers. And in a flash, I'd have information, piles of it, to look at. So I've used this information to write a booklet called Black Writers. There are so many of them, and famous, even though I'd never heard of them. I picked out 5 of the writers, and you can see some of them are very famous. I bet you've never heard of any of them. Well, here goes. Here's my booklet, Black Writers. Black writers. This is a list of famous writers. Ernest Hemingway, who wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls, Alex Haley, Autobiography of Malcolm X, Mark Twain, Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, J.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, James Baldwin, Go Tell It to the Mountain, Octavia Butler, Kindred, Roald Dahl, Matilda, and Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man. You probably recognise many of these, but some were unfamiliar. You did not recognise them. I wonder why. I've put the names up again. Can you see the reason why now? Is it because they're nearly all men? They're nearly all men, aren't they? Or is it because the ones you do not recognise are black? The first is Alex Haley. He was born in New York in 1921 and died in 1992. His first book was the autobiography of Malcolm X, published in 1965, but his most popular book was Roots, the Saga of an American Family. This was very popular and led to the TV series, which had over 130 million viewers. You may have seen it. He carried out many interviews, including Muhammad Ali, Sammy Davis Jr., and Johnny Carson, so it was very popular. His interview with George Rockwell, the leader of the American Nazi Party, was recreated in Roots. James Baldwin, he was born in New York in 1924 and died in 1987. His books included The Fire Next, Double Fine's work, Go Tell It to the Mountain. One of his novels was unfinished, which was adapted for film as a documentary, which won several awards. It was called I Am Not Your Negro in 2016. It's quite clever. When he was 10, he wrote a play at his school. He was encouraged by his white teacher, but his father didn't like him being taught by a white teacher, although in the end he gave way. The street in San Francisco is named after him. It's called Baldwin Court. Maya Angelou, she was born in St. Louis in 1928 and died in 2014. All her books have been bestsellers. She was famous for her 7 autobiographies, but also for her cookbooks. One was called Hallelujah, The Welcome Table, Great Food All Day Long. Her biographies include I Know Why a Cage Birds Sing, Gather Together in My Name. She was also a successful poet, and she recited her poem on the post of mourning at the inauguration of Bill Clinton. Octavia Butler. She was born in Pasadena in 1947 and died in 2006. She was famous for her science fiction work, which included a series called the Paternist series in 1976, Survivor in 76, and Kindred in 79. She was a very interesting woman, and her books often predicted the direction which American politics would take. You can see it now, what's happened already. She predicted the effect of global warming, climate change. I mentioned how difficult it was for a black writer to be published. In 1987, remember, her publisher still insisted on putting two white women on the cover of her book, Dawn, even though the main character is black. Dawn is scheduled to be adapted for TV. Ralph Ellison. He was born in Oklahoma City in 1913 and died in 1994. His writings include The Invisible Man, 1953. This is not the one you see in the films. It's a different sort of Invisible Man. His other books are Shadow and Act, 1964, Flying Home and Other Stories, and 3 Days Before the Shooting. Ralph Ellison was the grandson of slaves. Can you imagine that? One of his grandfather was a slave. That was when he was born. He tried to enroll at Tuskegee Institute to study music. He tried 3 times. He only got the 3rd time because they were short of a trumpet player. His book, The Invisible Man, was a bestsellers list for 16 weeks and won the National Book Award. So there we are, 5 of the famous, all of you have probably never heard of them, black writers. If you look at their history, you can see what they did was great. Is it a coincidence? Only one of them was from the South. Of course, there are many, many more black writers. Look up the next few and find out about their writings. It's easy nowadays with Google. We have Amira Baraka, W.E.D. Du Bois, Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Richard Wright and Toni Morrison. I must admit I've never heard of these black writers. When I was at school, we never talked about them. Hopefully nowadays schools will include them in their lessons about writers. Well, there we are, that's my short list of famous writers, famous black writers, and I hope it's helped you to understand that they were famous, but not told about. So, bye.